Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about a drama thriller film called Civil War from 2024. Enjoy your viewing. The film begins in the near future with an address to the nation by the President of the United States of America. The president claims that the Civil War, started by California and Texas, who were dissatisfied with his rule, is almost over and the rebels have been defeated. Smith, a photojournalist, watches the speech from his hotel room. The panorama of New York City stretches outside the windows, with flashes of explosions on the streets. In the afternoon, Smith goes to a humanitarian aid distribution point, where the number of people in need and police officers is almost equal to the number of journalists recording the events. Having met her colleagues, she tries on a bright vest with the words "press" on it and goes about her immediate duties, taking pictures. Smith sees a young colleague, Jessie, almost get hurt during the clash and pulls her away from the crowd to share her vest so that she can be a little different from the others. The woman spots a suicide bomber in the crowd and pulls Jessie to the ground before the explosion. Immediately afterwards, Smith grabs his camera, taking the first pictures of the victims. As he walks away, Jessie turns around and takes a photo of his idol at work. Later, Smith meets with fellow journalists Joel and Sammy at the hotel. Sammy is convinced that after the fall of Washington, the states divided by the Civil War will reunite again. When Sammy learns that Smith and Joel are planning a trip to Washington to interview the president before he is assassinated by separatists, he asks to go with them. Going to bed, she meets Jessie, who thanks her for the help and the vest. Lying in the bathtub, she recalls the many acts of human cruelty she has witnessed dispassionately over the years. The morning paints the deserted streets in sniper optics in soft colors. When Smith comes downstairs, she sees the girl from yesterday in the car, which she does not like. However, Joel has already agreed to take her with him to share his professional experience. There are almost 1,400 kilometers to go to the final destination. The journey begins. The journalists drive onto a road filled with abandoned cars, between which they have to maneuver carefully. A military checkpoint they pass sees refugees traveling in the opposite direction. Stopping at a petrol station to fill up their tank, they notice that armed civilian militiamen are on duty, selling petrol without coupons at very high prices. Jessie gets out to stretch her legs and walks to the car wash, followed by a young man with an assault rifle, and then Smith. They see bodies hanging in the middle of the sink, and a young man with an assault rifle proudly says that they are looters. He confesses that he went to school with the prisoners and suggests that Jessie shoot one right in front of her. To defuse the situation, Smith offers to take a photo. The guy's ambition gets the better of him, and he poses between the victims. Later in the car, Jessie is upset that she was confused in a serious situation and couldn't take a picture. Smith advises not to take the victim's suffering to heart, as they have no control over it. Jessie starts to cry from the stress, but quickly pulls himself together. As they drive through a car park filled with destroyed armored vehicles, Smith asks Joel to slow down. She calls the girl over to the crashed helicopter to take some pictures, distracting her from the previous incident. At the halt, 820 kilometers from Washington, the journalists enjoy the sounds of gunfire at night and tracer marks in the sky. Smith complains to her mentor that she is outraged by the fact that the hotspot occurred in her homeland. Joel pours alcohol over his sadness and fear of the shootout they will witness tomorrow. The next day, the journalists get to the site of the firefight. Armed men in civilian clothes are exchanging fire with the military. Journalists are recording the events. When the soldier is pinned down by fire, the unit throws smoke bombs and covers him, but he still gets several bullets as he runs to his own men. He is dragged around a corner, unconscious. Smith circles around, dispassionately recording what is happening, as does Jessie. The squad moves inside the building, slowly clearing it of defenders. The shooters move cautiously through the corridors and up the stairs, trying to find the soldiers. The civilians finish off the first wounded man they encounter without bothering to help him and move on, allowing the journalists to film in a safe area. Jessie cautiously approaches the dead man with his camera. After the battle, Joel happily chats with the civilian commander while the other shooters take the uniformed prisoners outside, line them up and shoot them with a heavy machine gun, much to the delight of Jessie's lens. Smith just looks around lazily, continuing to smoke. With less than 500 kilometers to go to Washington, the journalists arrive at a refugee camp located in the stadium. Smith brings Jessie lunch, and she develops the film in a camping lab. The woman shares her professional experience. After they look through the first photos, she freezes on a shot of a dying wounded man, which her experienced colleague praises. After surviving the night in the camp, the journalists continue their journey through towns that bear the mark of the Civil War in the form of fires, deserted streets, and burnt-out cars. Jessie takes pictures of his colleagues and their emotionless faces, tired of expressing sympathy after years of work. The next stop is a small town that seems to have been untouched by the war. They enter a clothing store where Joel asks the shopkeeper if she knows about the Civil War. She replies that their town did not take sides. Smith tries on a dress, and Jesse takes a photo as a souvenir. The journalists are 300 kilometers away from Washington when they come across an unfinished New Year's Eve fair and a dead body lying on the road. They stop in confusion, wondering if it is safe to continue. Sammy suggests turning back and taking a different road, while Smith looks at a mansion nearby through the camera zoom. Joel slowly drives closer, and an unseen sniper opens fire from inside the house. Having spotted the sniper couple in ambush, the journalists move closer to them, provoking the enemy shooter to open fire. A conversation with the soldiers reveals that they do not know with whom they are dueling and on whose side they are. Someone is trying to kill them, and they are responding in kind. While Joel is talking and Jesse is taking pictures, Smith is lying on the ground admiring the flowers she never had time to shoot. The sniper pulls the trigger, a shot is fired, and the journalists continue their journey. While driving, while Joel and Jesse are taking a nap, Smith notices a car following them on the road. Sammy advises them to slow down and let it pass, ignoring the driver. But once they are on a level playing field, the pursuers drive alongside, attracting attention with their signals. Waking up to the sounds, Joel recognizes the passenger as a Chinese colleague from Hong Kong named Tony. Tony and his partner are also traveling to Washington to see the president. Before he leaves, Joel tells him about it. Tony jumps into the car with them on the move. An encouraged Jesse also switches places, and then Tony's driver adds gas, disappearing from sight. The journalists follow, outraged that Jesse has disappeared with a strange Asian man. Smith yells at Tony, and they nearly hit an oncoming truck as they pull over. The journalists find the Chinese man's car near the farm. The doors are open. No one is inside. Smith turns onto the road, where his colleagues have probably gone. The journalists find the driver and Jesse surrounded by armed men in military uniforms. To make matters worse, they are busy dumping a pile of bodies right out of the back of the lorry into one big grave. Joel is confident that nothing will happen, because the soldiers are clearly Western military, which means they respect the press badges. Sammy denies that they will be killed as unnecessary witnesses. Leaving Sammy, the journalists go to the military. Joel introduces himself to the soldier in charge as a journalist, and says that the prisoners are his colleagues, with whom they are going to report on the opening of a university campus in a nearby town. In response, the soldier shoots at Tony's partner, killing him on the spot. The conversation immediately ceases to be casual. Lead clouds are gathering overhead. Joel says they are Americans. The soldiers ask which side they support in the current war. When the soldier learns that Joel is from Florida, he turns to Jesse to clarify that she is from Missouri. Smith, who was born in Colorado, is next in line. When it comes to Tony, it turns out that he is from Hong Kong. The soldier responds by shooting him in the chest. Joel asks for the shooting to stop, but this only escalates the conflict. They brandish their weapons, preparing to shoot everyone. At this point, Sammy appears, driving a car, and he runs the soldiers into the grave, over the corpses. Jesse is also forced to jump in, but she quickly makes it to the top, where Joel helps her. The third soldier grabs an assault rifle and opens fire on them. Once they get to the road, Joel cries from the stress, and Jesse feels sick. Sammy says they need to stop. He is wounded and cannot drive. Handing the wheel over to Joel, they race forward through a forest on fire. In the morning, they reach the military base in Charlottesville, where the Western Coalition forces are concentrated. While Jesse looks sadly at the dead Sammy, Joel screams, releasing his pent-up fear, pain, and rage. As her colleague's body is loaded into a zinc coffin, Smith deletes his posthumous photo from her camera, not wanting him to become another dispassionate illustration of war. She then finds Joel, who has learned from his colleagues that Western forces are already storming Washington. They will not be able to interview the president until the end of the war. The next morning, while Smith is cleaning the cabin of blood, the columns march on Washington. Realizing that it would be unwise to miss a historic event, journalists follow, documenting the final assault. Fierce clashes continue in the city, with shelling of historical monuments and the defenders holed up in them. Inspired by the chance to become a classic of photojournalism, Jesse almost runs under fire to get a good shot. But the tired Smith suddenly gets fed up with the violence and doesn't really shoot anything, reflecting sadly behind her armor. She sees soldiers launching rockets at the Lincoln Memorial, helicopters hovering in the streets, firing at the defenders, tanks overcoming barricades. Photographers move along with the assault force. Mortar launchers take up positions on the roof to fire at the positions near the White House, where the president is seated. The main forces are also moving in for the decisive blow. The defenders hit one car in front of journalists. Jesse takes a picture of the burning crew. Tanks arrive to help split the firing position. Joel leads a completely weakened Smith after the stormtroopers. The vehicles break through the gates and enter the White House grounds, from which the Secret Service is taking the president out to put him in an armored motorcade. 3 cars break through the troops, crashing into the bumpers. A limousine rams an armored car. Watching him being shot, Smith suddenly realizes that the head of state is not inside. She calls her colleagues to the White House while the soldiers shoot the passengers. The commander of one platoon sees this and follows them. The journalists enter the empty White House, which the attackers have suddenly lost interest in. The soldiers who entered after them tell them not to follow them and go in search of the president. Of course, photographers follow, taking beautiful shots. In the press room, the secretary offers to discuss the terms of the president's surrender in exchange for security guarantees. They just shot her and moved on. A shootout with the Secret Service begins in the corridors. The advance is slowed down by the need to eliminate the guards, but the soldiers are slowly but surely moving forward, clearing room by room. Jesse, who has become excited, breathes down their necks, shooting the most spectacular shots and not thinking about the risk at all. Even Smith stays behind the soldiers, keeping his head down. At one point, Jesse runs out into the corridor to take a picture before the soldiers overwhelm the guards with fire. Smith runs after her to push her to the ground. As she falls, Jesse takes a series of shots as a bullet pierces her older colleague, and she falls dead next to her. Joel calls for the girl to follow him, aiming for the biggest story of his life. The separatists are already pulling the president out from under the table when Joel appears. He tells the soldiers to wait and asks the president to say something at the end. He asks them not to kill him. When Joel gets what he wants, the soldiers shoot the president. Jesse captures this moment in a series of shots. This is where the movie, like the life of the head of state, ends, unlike the Civil War. If you have watched the video so far, you should know that I am happy to have viewers like you. Thank you for watching to the end. Subscribe to the channel and follow the news. Klonsak Recapped was with you. See you soon.